Welcome to the Granite Zero podcast. Thanks for giving me your time.
Thank you very much. Don't know how we've ended up here, but here I am. I'm a very poor substitute for Foxy. Let's put it that way.
Nah, never, never,
Yeah,
never.
seriously.
No, I do. I really appreciate you actually giving me your time.
But
Obviously, I've heard quite a lot about you from our little backs and forths that we've had via text. This is the first time we've actually seen each other, I believe.
it is.
But no, it was. I reached out. Would have been, when was it? 2020. Either
19.
2020 or 2019. I think it was just before COVID.
Yeah.
So yeah, 2019. I was like, I want to raise some money for Rock to Recovery, and I believe at that moment in time, I was going to be the first to do a team sporting event, and I think I got overtaken by a rugby match, I believe.
No, I think to be fair, yours was solely on behalf of Rock to Recovery, wasn't it? So
It was, yeah.
it would have been the first team event just for Rock to Recovery. So you have that accolade.
We'll take it. We'll take it. But now all the lads were well behind the cause itself, because a lot of them were a bit shady. They were like, "Hang on a minute, you're raising money for the Marines here." I was like, "No, we're not." I was like, "No, we're not."
No, you're definitely not. We're over 40% army. And we obviously have fewer. We do have quite a lot of Royal Marines, but that's about just low 20%. I mean, clearly the Royal Navy and the Royal Air Force are a little bit lower, but they're still significant. We're talking about 300 to 400 clients from the service, and of course we do family members as well. So we add them on, but they're equally as important. So partners,
Of course,
children.
I've mentioned that on quite a few podcasts actually. The fact that you guys do help the families as well, because it's a big neglect. Like, a lot of people don't understand the strain it can cause for a serviceman to be away from their family, or service person, should I say?
Yeah, and sometimes the stresses for a service person only really materialise when they're a veteran and they're home, and that change, that transition, has been very difficult for them, and so that Sean can be a very difficult period, and that's probably, we see more veteran partners and children than we do serving partners and children, but
Yeah, yeah,
we do have a few, and but I think those, anyone who's got stress in the house, everyone suffers it. It affects everybody, and so we're fortunate in that we get clients by word of mouth. We don't publicise. We don't market, and we certainly don't advertise. So it's not that we have a luxury to be able to do this, but it's part of the ethos that it's not just about the individual. It's
yeah,
about the family, and the services talk about the importance of the family, and they mean it. But sometimes once you've left, it's very difficult to deliver.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
the NHS is overwhelmed, and sometimes also people don't know where to turn to, don't know how to turn to, or don't want to. They
Yeah,
feel
it's the first step it's the hardest to
they feel like they
the
should be able to
admitting.
cope. They feel
Yeah,
like they should be able to cope, Sean. They feel that I shouldn't be this weak. I think that's a phrase we hear.
yep,
The other one that, you know, in the early days, I used to run the phone. So I was the point of contact with Jamie on the phones. And you would hear, well, you must have people who are more,
yeah.
ill than I am. And our response is, how ill do you want to be before you get help, for crying out
Yeah.
loud? You
But I
know,
have to admit, Charlie, that's exactly how I was.
yeah,
I Because as we discussed at the start, I was RAF regiment, so it was it. I always was in the mindset of, I didn't see the same type of action as the paras, as the Marines, as the rifles, as whoever else. I can't have any issues. I can't have any problems. There's people worse than me. and that's how I started. I was like, nah, I, I was reluctant to even admit I had any sort of a problem. It was only the missus. It was like, no, you're not the Sean that I married.
Yeah.
Took a long time. It definitely did.
So it does, and you shouldn't feel ashamed for that. It's that attitude is demonstrates an individual that takes responsibility for themselves, has standards and values, which you attribute not just to yourself, your family, but to other people, and you believe that you should be able to cope with all the circumstances that are thrown at you, and that's not necessarily true. None of us can. Not myself. Uh, you know, not anyone really. At times, we all need help to be able to be the best that we can be, and I think that is really important for people to understand that sometimes we're also not ready to go and get help, and we have to get to the stage where you are ready to get help. And we have quite a lot of clients who register, don't attend their first session. We let them know that we're always here, and sometime in the next 12 months, some of them will come through and say, I really want to do this now. And of course, we're open for business for them. And certainly if you're a therapist or one of our coaches, you're an NHS therapist or a coach, there's not much you can do if a client's not willing to change, not willing to listen, not willing to do the work. You'll know that. I know that. And it's really important that you've got that meeting halfway, person that's sitting in front of you, and you build a relationship. So one of the other things we do that's different is clients have direct access to their coach. And that's really important because then, two things really. The first is there's no need to call at 8 o'clock in the evening if you know you're going to be answered at 8 o'clock the next morning, or at the weekend. And secondly is it's really reassuring to know that if you need to, you can text your coach or you can call your coach and you'll get 10 minutes of value at the other end of a telephone. And that can ward off all sorts of imagined horrors, over the next few days, as opposed to waiting for a session. It can be dealt with there and then. What's your concern? What's your worry? Let's talk about this. Let's work through it on the phone. 10 minutes later, off you go. Have a good day.
Yeah. It's as I said, that first step to admit and try and commit to getting help is a huge struggle. But once you take that step, it's as though, well, I found when I first went to therapy, it was though someone just like completely turned the tap on and all the water came just rushing out, and I was like, I think my therapist was taken back a little bit. Like, you've had this much stress built up over this amount of time, and all you have to do, and I've said it from the moment I hit record on here, because this is my therapy now, is talking to the people like yourself. Even if it's down to a Wednesday. Unfortunately, I didn't do it this week, but I chat with my brother every Wednesday on the podcast, and it's just those little releases, just that little bit of pressure just released out. We don't even have to talk about anything in particular. It's just knowing that I've got someone to talk to. Because
I think that's really key, and for a lot of our coaches, for all of our coaches, it's doing them good, doing this work as well. Jamie Sanderson, the man who set this up with Foxy, he'll tell you that he's gaining as a person through coaching others, because it's not necessarily a teacher-pupil relationship. It's a person-to-person relationship.
Yeah.
And if you've got the attitude that you never stop learning, Christ, I'm 60, nearly 66, and I know I never stop learning.
No. Every day's a learning day, definitely.
You've got the ability to improve, haven't you? You've got the ability, and also sometimes the acceptance. We have a number of clients who have a normal happiness level that might be lower than most of us. It's getting them to understand that actually that's their normal, and therefore don't think you have to be like somebody else.
that's another big thing is
It
you
is
don't
another
have
big
to
thing.
always be
Yeah.
the bouncy man in the room. You don't have to be the life and soul of the party all the time. It's okay, and it's okay to just be fucking sad from time to time.
I think it's
I
just
even
as
heard
good.
a I saw a little thing on it was on it was either on Instagram or TikTok or something like that, but it was Mark Ormrod,
Yeah.
and he mentioned just crying. He said he went sometimes you just need to cry and just
He's
it's
a
as though you're e-purging your body and just letting it all out. Sometimes you
he's
just need a good cry.
he's a good man, Mark, isn't he? He's a good mate of mine.
Yes, he is a fantastic guest that I had on the show as well. Very, very good.
Yeah, he is good. And did you know I employed him
I did because I watched
for a walk?
his documentary on
Ah, right.
Prime.
Yeah. And what a remarkable bloke he is.
Yeah,
Got a lovely
I
family as
think
well.
I think 'cause obviously everybody's heard of Mark, and I watched him on the Invictus Games and whatnot. And as soon as I saw that he had his documentary out on Prime, I was like, I'm watching that, and I watched it. And the first thing I did was send him a DM on Twitter, and I just said, you're an absolute inspiration
Yeah, he is.
to anybody who is low or thinks they're down and out. Just look at Mark's story and just see how he's overcome. Well, he's if he was an RAF regiment gunner, he would use our motto for that, which is obviously per ardua through adversity, because he's smashing through it.
No, he's good. And he, you know, he's not afraid to say he's used our services, and you know, it's okay. Well, I don't want to use that phrase. It's okay not to be okay because it's a bit overworn, but um, it's about understanding yourself and
Yeah,
knowing that sometimes you need, or Mark would call it, he said, I just sometimes need a really good vent. And if I can go to Jamie and Malcolm and have a good old vent, he says they'll pick to pieces what I've said and we'll talk about it. And he always feels better afterwards. So I think that's the other thing our service does is that there's no limit to the number of sessions that you can have. So, you know, you can keep coming back. And we're now in year 7 and we've got clients who we haven't seen for 2 or 3 years, but they've just said, can I come in and have a top up? And you know, we don't pretend that we can cure anyone. We don't
hmm.
pretend that the client does whatever they do it themselves with our guidance, help, and suggestion. But at the end of the day, it's the client that's doing the work. It's the client that's listening, doing the homework. It's the client that's putting the effort in.
Yeah,
It's the client
exactly.
that gets the rewards. So if a client comes back and says, you know, I'm feeling a bit low. I need a chat. Well, it's not a chat, but I need a session. I need to do some work with you. I need to remember what it is that I need to do. Then that's what we're there for, because we are not, whatever some clients might say, magicians. We don't cure. You know, that's for the clinicians. That's not our
Yeah, yeah,
language. And our language, the other thing we don't do is we don't allow talk or even hints about suicide. We don't use clinical language because we're not clinicians. But more importantly, we invite clients to leave diagnoses behind because we can't help them with that. We're not those
yeah,
kind of clinical professionals. But what we can do is help them change the meaning they're making of things. We can help them look at their thoughts, their meanings, and we can teach them you're not your thoughts. You know, you can control what that brain is doing. It's just chemicals. You know,
yeah,
don't let those chemicals rot you up. And here's some ways in which you can help. But also find your own mindfulness, find your own rock, find what it is that makes you a better person. Walking in the mountains, on water, music, owning a cat. It doesn't matter what it is, but what is it that
yeah,
gives you pleasure? Because you can't look after others until you can, you know, until you're happy yourself, until you look after yourself. You've got to look after yourself. That's important.
yeah, yeah. And sometimes I've said it on here a couple of times as well, and you're sort of touching on it as well there. Sometimes you have to be selfish in that aspect because it's if you're not good, how can you then try and help someone else? And there's one thing
And I
I've
think
said to my missus so many times because she is always putting others before herself. And she won't mind me saying that she does suffer quite badly with anxiety and and a few other sort of issues. And I'm like, look, focus on yourself and stop inviting all these other people in to help them out. When I know it makes you feel good, but that's only like a quick fix. You need to chill out and relax and talk with me. We'll go out for a date. We'll
No, I think that's
or
really,
whatever.
and we try to practice what we preach in Rock to Recovery,
Yeah.
because we work 365 days a year. Certainly, when I first started, when we were very small, it was 7 days a week. You were available to people, and so we go out, and that's one of the reasons that I do my walks. So every year I take some clients, supporters, whoever wants to come along. We do walks. We've done Hadrian's Wall, the Ridgeway. We're doing the Cotswolds Way next year. 7 days together. Some come for a day. Some come for the whole week. Old friends, new friends, and but for me, it gets me away from the phone. It gets me away from the computer. Yeah. It actually allows me, and I love walking. Having been a Royal Marine for 29 years, I like being out in the fresh air, and I like being away from the trappings of modern life. And no, it's good, and we encourage everyone to do that. It's got to be something that you enjoy, and it doesn't matter what. I've started going to tribute bands, from Genesis, Dire Straits, did we did Pink Floyd last week, and the power of music to make you feel good is extraordinary. It really is quite extraordinary. So we try and get people to do whatever their passion is. Malcolm's passion is Luton Town. Sad, but that's his passion. Goes to nearly every home game. Malcolm's our head of coaching. Goes to nearly every home game. For him, that's a passion. And but good football match can also make you feel good.
It can also make you very, very sad.
Well, as an Oxford United supporter, you'll understand which side of the fence I'm on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, at the minute, unfortunately for me, and as a Manchester United fan, it's a bit topsy-turvy. I've said it for a while now. I was spoilt when I was growing up. It was my dad that got me onto Manchester United, and throughout the 90s and the noughties, I was spoilt. I watched him win everything, and it's as though the universe is picking on me.
Well, the trouble is that you can't appreciate the ups if you don't know the downs.
No, exactly. And I started on the ups, so yeah. And it's quite funny how you see the change in supporters. It's bizarre. For me, it's win, lose, draw. I'm a United fan. Yes, they'll annoy me. Yes, I won't like them for the day, but I will never change. But some of the things I see online, it's like, are you even a fan? You're not a fan. But I digress. So
I think
what I do,
that also shows the mental makeup, though, doesn't it, Sean? It's it's you're riding. You want just success. Actually, what you want to be able to do is just look at life. I'm terrible. I can't watch England play anything unless it's live, and I don't that often. But we do tend to sometimes transfer our feelings into sports matches, theatre, music, whatever, animals. We do that, and it's not wrong to do that, but you need to recover from those downs and those ups as quickly as possible.
Yeah, definitely. What? So here's one that is we're gonna dive into your background now. Why not? What sort of guided you towards the Royal Marines?
Ooh.
Is it because they're the best of the best of the best?
I think I must have met them when I was about. Apparently, I told my parents, which is surprising they listened. I told my parents at the age of 8. Apparently, I was going to join the Royal Marines. I think I met them at those county shows that the services used to turn up at and everything else. And I was a very shy, retiring boy actually, and I would have only watched from the sidelines. I wouldn't have joined in. But I apparently said at the age of 8 I was going to join them, and that's all I ever thought about, without it being overly emotional or stupid. But I was
I
quietly
got you.
determined that's what I was going to do.
Yeah. Well, you got you there.
Yep.
Got you there. Got you past. No, that's fair enough. I was quite similar. Like in my upbringing. Well, my dad was a PTI for 22 years.
All right.
So my granddad before him. So I think he served 36 he was an aircraft technician in the Air Force. So the Air Force bloodline was. My brother unfortunately couldn't join up because he's got terrible asthma. He's got the world's worst lungs, I think. So it was sort of falling on my shoulders, and I don't know if my dad was guiding me towards it or if that's what I wanted to do. But similar to yourself, as a young age, I was like, I'm joining the Air Force. Originally, I wanted to
I had
follow directly in Dad's footsteps as a PTI, but unfortunately, I'm not as academic as most people. So
Did you?
yeah,
I had no military in my family, bar one grandparent served in the First World War, or both grandfathers served in the First
yeah,
World War. My dad did national service at the end of the Second World War, but there was absolutely nothing. So there was no family influence at all in my decision. And by the time I'd started working for the Royal Marines, my father wasn't around. So, I really did. We were lucky in those days. We had there were good liaison officers who looked after you, prepared you well for
yeah.
what challenges that were coming ahead. And I don't know, they must have seen something in me. And I scraped through.
Well, that's pretty awesome, to be fair. And then, obviously, as I read through your bio that you sent me via the email, you've been a few places. You've done you've seen a bit. I think, apart from Rusty Firmin, I believe you're my only other guest who have served in the Falklands.
Yeah, I was quite lucky. I was recruiting in London at the time, and but it put me very close to the person that sent us around, and I left him in no doubt that I wanted to go, and I was sent down as a battle casualty replacement, along with 149 others, and I ended up actually in Ajax Bay, and defending Commander Log Regiment and the logistic base there, around the canning factory, and it was, my trench was right on the burial ground, for an awful lot of people, Argentinians included, and which we kind of looked after. But I didn't have a very exciting war really, other than we did get hit in the Bedivere, but the bomb didn't go off, so that was lucky. I went back a few years ago, found my trench, could even stand in it still, and it
That
looked as
bring
bleak and
I
cold,
was going to say, did that
miserable.
bring back any sort of
Yeah, it did.
faint memories?
I was really lucky actually, because Patrick's son, who's an air traffic controller in the RAF, he was in the Falklands on a 6-month tour. So I deliberately went back with him there. Actually, that was a nice touch. He controlled the plane coming into the Falklands,
That's pretty cool.
that was nice for me. And not so sure about him, but it was nice to take him there. And he's not one to be quiet. Is our Pat? And no, he got quite quiet. I had a couple of the guys from the troop as well with me as well.
Yeah.
No, it brought back a lot of good memories. Really wonderful people. You never quite knew what was happening, when the end would be. You didn't know what necessarily was even going on at the time. You just cracked on, facing what was in front of you and dealing with it, and not thinking too far ahead, which has probably been, I learned some really good life lessons down there, which was,
Yeah.
don't plan too far ahead, always have an aim and a strategy, but don't get disappointed if you get knocked off course very quickly, because that's the way life is. And it changed me for the better. It made me a much more compassionate man. I became less, I'm a Royal Marines commando, became more You know, we're here to look after each other, and you know, these things happen. War happens, but you know, you've got to change a little bit, and you've got to recognise, you know, how horrible it can be.
Definitely, and the sights of war can be
Yeah,
horrific. The sounds, even the sounds, and
yeah.
yeah,
It,
it's like
but I wouldn't say I had a, you know, I for me it was a positive experience,
hmm,
and but I didn't do anything like, you know, the real heroes did down there, and you know, it's interesting that these days we don't get many Falklands veterans requiring coaching. Um, we get a lot from Iraq and Afghanistan,
hmm,
as you can imagine. Um,
yeah,
and I think that the task that those guys had and girls out in Iraq and Afghanistan, you know, was in some ways, you know, mentally a much tougher environment to be in
yeah.
than for us,
I,
than for us
I
Falklands.
I was mentioning something quite similar, um, and it's not. I never went out to Northern Ireland, so I can't compare, or the Falklands for that matter. 'Cause I'm far too young. Um, but so I think it was no, it was on Saturday. So on Saturday, I had a former UFC fighter come round for dinner with my brother, and we was chatting, and he was asking me about what was it like out in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I said, it's a very strange environment because you're out there doing, we were out there supposed to be doing the hearts and minds type of missions because the time that I went, that's when we weren't smashing in doors like we were at the start.
Yeah,
We're starting closing it down. We're starting to do the hearts and minds, but you're always on edge. You're always on alert. You can't really take a step back or a step backwards because that's when they'll get you. And he said, "Well, what was it like? Because obviously World War II, World War I, Falklands, you sort of knew who the enemy was."
absolutely.
And I was like, exactly. I went, we're fighting people that are hiding in plain sight. And the same with in Northern Ireland, I'm pretty sure was very similar. The fact that
Yeah.
unless they're walking around with a fucking balaclava on their face, you're gonna go, it's
Northern Ireland, I think, again, Afghanistan, Iraq was a lot harder. In Northern Ireland, you know, it doesn't matter what people say, but, you know, my tour, I had plenty of Protestants, but also plenty of Catholics on both sides of the fence, you know, really grateful that we were there. And I think, you know, it was, it, it was, you know, part of the United Kingdom. That's one of the really sad things about it all.
mm,
Um, and it was, you know, a sad job. But the vast majority of the population, you know, wanted peace and wanted it all to end, and
yeah,
you know, as we all did, and you know, and I'm glad that it's, you know, there's a semblance of normalcy there now, so you know, people can get on with their lives, because you know, like anywhere in the world, ordinary people, you'd have seen this in Iraq and Afghanistan, the ordinary people are, you know, they just want to be left in peace, get on with their lives with
yeah,
their
yeah,
families, and try and have as good a time as they can. And
yeah,
greedy, powerful people tend to ruin it for them.
yeah. That's it. That's spot on. That is spot on. And I remember um, being out in Kandahar, and we made a wrong turn on a road, and we drove through a farmer's field. And at the time, the lads were like, "Oh, fuck it, it doesn't matter. It's a farmer's field." And I believe that night we got rocketed a lot into
Oh,
the base. And obviously, that's our job is to fucking prevent that. That's our main job. Um, and the farmer basically just got pissed off. So he basically was like, "No, you guys can set up here. It's not a problem. Just
yeah,
fucking fire in." And that could have all been avoided, like if we didn't drive, or if we went in even just to apologize. Sorry, we took a wrong turn. Here's $40 or whatever it may be, $100. I don't know. Just to apologize because I'm sure it wouldn't been as bad because we definitely were not as bad as our American counterparts for driving through fields and stuff like that. We tried our best to stick to the tracks as best as we could because as vulnerable as they were, especially with the way they like to plant traps and IEDs and whatnot. It's better than fucking off all the locals, because you don't want them to turn, because then you'll get inundated with whoever, and that's the scary part, which takes us all the way back to always being on red alert, you could say, and then
Yeah.
not being able to decompress. Obviously, we
Mm.
had decompression in Cyprus, but what's a day or 2 days or whatever it is? Can't decompress in a day.
And I think that's where it's changed. In Northern Ireland, I don't think I spoke to my family on the phone. It was letters. The Falklands,
Mm.
I got 84 letters on the 21st of June. And had to work out which order in which to read them.
Yeah, unless they put a date on there, you ain't gonna know.
All a bit, and then suddenly went to Kosovo in 2000. And you've got your 45-minute phone call home. And it was a very different world. And part of me, I came back from the Falklands, and part of me wanted to go back there. It took me a while to adjust to being in London again. I was living in London at the time. It took me a while to adjust from being there. And I know it sounds strange, but in the Falklands, life was so simple. And you spent your entire time out in the open. It was simple, it was tough, but you had good people around you, the best.
Yeah.
And in the log regiment, you had Navy, Army, Air Force, as well as Royal Marines, and they're all brilliant people. And it was very, very simple. And I think the pressure of ringing home and hearing about kids' problems at school, or wife's problems at work, is that really helping? I mean, I know you can't stop it, but you've got to be a
I
very
get where you're
strong
coming from.
character. You've got to be a very strong character to switch off from that and switch back onto your work again. And I know a lot of modern day soldiers, Marines, Navy, Air Force, that don't necessarily talk much to home, while they're away, for that very reason. And sometimes the family don't want it either. You're away, you're away. My family have always said, when you go away for 3 to 6 months, that's a damn sight easier than 2 weeks here, 3 weeks there, another week there, dipping in and out of family life. So it's tough for the service people these days, very tough. And they have my admiration, because they do an outstanding job, and they're outstanding people. And Trish and I still sponsor young, because we live close to Livingston, we sponsor young Royal Marine officers going through training, and I keep telling them that I wouldn't get in. I mean, the quality of the people joining the military these days is outstanding.
Yeah, I have to admit, I watched it was on BBC. I think it's called Soldier, and it was following the infantry going through their infantry training. And I remember it was bizarre, because I was talking to some people just online, and they were like, "Oh, have you seen how gashed they are?" And I was like, "Well, you were the same when you were going through training. What are you talking about?
Exactly.
Nobody's a perfect soldier when they first get there." I went, and I was
I
looking at them,
remember
and I was like,
when
"Their skills and
I did
drills are
some training.
actually very good. Very good skills and drills coming
I,
through."
I I did a training job at Livingston, just before going out to Kosovo, and Buster Housley was running the commando training wing, so where the recruits get trained, so
Yeah.
the 32-week course. And when the instructors used to come to him with, really complaining about this recruit or whatever, Buster used to pull their recruit training record card and read out things about them in the same week of training, and saying, perhaps we ought to be a little bit more training them than criticizing. But it's a natural thing to do, isn't it? Because all instructors want their guys to be the best, or girls to be the best. They want them to perform. But we do forget, don't we, how rubbish we were sometimes.
Oh yeah, my daughter asked me, because she watched a couple of the episodes. She was like, were you better than this? I was like, at some things, yeah. At other things, absolutely not. like in the block, I was terrible. I couldn't iron my kit properly. I had to get one of my mates to iron my my blue shirts. The only thing I was good at was polishing my boots. I was from that was just from practice from football, polishing my boots at football. But
Yeah.
yeah, in the block, terrible. In the field, slightly better. Wasn't outstanding, but I was very, very good at being loaded up with kit and then just sent, go on, Tommo, off you pop, march away,
Interesting. I mean,
pack
it is
horse.
interesting because the great thing the military does, and I think the great thing that Royal Military does, is that it allows everyone to be an individual, and yet somehow they're molded into a very effective team. And
Yes.
you know, it's quite extraordinary how it happens, and it's just the result of hundreds of years of doing it, and it's kind of in the DNA. And recovery, you know, does the same, is trying to get the individual to look at itself and say, I am an individual. I don't have to have others believe my truth. This is me. And then change yourself to be able to fit in with the environment around you so that it doesn't create stresses and pressures, you know, mentally on you, so that you can just say, well, look, you know, there's not a lot I can do about that, but this is how I'm going to react to that situation. I'm still me, but you know, I've got to get on with this, and I can think my way through it, um, and still be part of the team. You know, modern life is, crikey, growing up in a small village in Berkshire, you know, a lady used to ring a bell at 12 o'clock. That was a signal for all her kids to go home for some lunch, you know, and then she'd ring it again at 5, and that was it. Off you went, supper time. And that's how we were. That's how we were.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't remember much trouble. I mean, maybe there was, but I don't remember it. And you know, it's totally different life. Totally different life. Now, I think the pressures on youngsters huge,
Oh,
huge.
definitely.
I feel sorry for
Definitely.
them.
And
I've
and
watched half of them.
everything's too fast as well. Like
Yeah,
even down to the things that they watch are about 10 seconds long and then they're flicking through and it's like, Jesus, slow down. It's like my
yeah, but
youngest
they're still
my
there though.
youngest is growing up too fast. Too fast. Growing up too quick.
But it's not. There's nothing we can do about it. There's nothing we can
No.
do about it, Sean. Have to, you know, that's the way it is. But I think also it's important for the youngsters, and so you know, Trish and I do remind them. We've got grandchildren now. You know, it was a different world. You know, we've come from a
Mm,
different world, and you know, you can't assume that we understand. We recognise, but you know, we
yeah.
don't necessarily understand why these things are important to them. So they've got to tell us. They've got to explain to us why it's important. You know, and kids' relationships at schools and things like that. Fascinating. We've got 5 of them, and so you know, we've seen it all, and
Yeah.
it is interesting. And I think the biggest thing that we did was convince them that it's not the quantity in life; it's definitely the quality.
Oh, 100%.
Um,
Quality
and
time.
and that's so they're, you know, we're still talking. So
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, definitely. I think one of the main things that you were sort of covering then as well when we were talking about service leavers and how you are you are an individual, but you're also part of the team. And I think the fact that a lot of veterans were always sort of told you need to be here at this time, you need to do this at this time, you need to make sure you packed it ready to go. You got to be here at fucking 05:30, blah blah blah. And then you leave and you're like, I don't know who I am. I've been told all the time. Like you have obviously your personality. Your personality has always been who you are, but then you lose that little bit of whatever it may be because you've been broken down and then built back up into a fighting machine, you could say. you're when you leave, you're like, where's that's gone? I don't know. It, especially for infanteers, you could say that's one of the hardest because of how you're trained and what you're trained in,
Yeah.
and then that's gone, and then you're like, what do I do in Civic Street? I don't know who Sean is. I know who Tommo is, but I don't know who Sean is. That was a big thing for me. I lost a massive part of myself.
I think it's a big thing for everyone. I think
Yeah,
that transition. I think that you hit it right in that the military necessarily has to organise your life,
mm,
and then Civvy Street, nobody will organise your life. Well, they will, but not to the extent that it was in the military. And then second to that is that the mistake that a lot of military people on leaving is that they trust everyone like they would trust everyone
yeah,
inside. And you can't afford to do that. It's not a question of, deep mistrust. It's a question of don't assume someone's going to have your back. Don't assume someone's going to actually help you. If you want to get on, you have to go and ask.
hmm,
There is going to be, you have to go and ask, you have to go and say. And actually in Civvy Street now, it's not weak to say, I need help, and do things. There are still probably some areas where it is, but by and large, it's adjusting to a whole new way of thinking about working life, and and also it changes the dynamics in the family when you're around all the time,
yeah,
unless you've got a job that takes you away. So there's a lot of adjustment that has to be done in that period, and the first 2 years on leaving, is very or can be very confusing, and it takes time to adjust. So give yourself time, talk about it. And that's another one of our failings, our collective failings, is we think, well, I should be able to cope with this. And
yeah,
you don't talk to your partner about it, you don't talk to the children about it when perhaps you should. And I'm as guilty as that as anyone else. And that communication is really important. And so many of the military often end up on their own. They feel isolated, mentally
mm,
isolated, even if they're not physically isolated. And that's when you've really got to get help, because that mental isolation is destructive,
yeah,
very destructive, and a tendency to start self-medicating with alcohol and drugs, thinking that that's going to help, and of course it never does. And you've just got to recognise, and it's astonishing. We only average 4 sessions, 8 hours worth of coaching per client. 8 hours of your life to go from unhappy to happy. You know,
yeah,
if you set that as an exam question, is it sensible to spend 8 hours of a life to go from unhappy to happy, or thoroughly miserable to, really coping with the world? We would all say yes, wouldn't we? Without hesitation.
yeah. I was case in point for that when I went to therapy. I think I did probably a max of 4, 5 maybe sessions, and I was like, yeah, I'm done. I'm fixed. Nah, not even close. Not even
Right.
close.
And I think it depends. We have a phrase, you know, you don't know what works until you try.
Mm,
So keep trying.
yeah, yeah.
You
I
know,
found
keep
yeah, I found a very, could say, niche. Um, it was basically a positive psychology course that I went on called
right.
Inner Armor, and unfortunately, this really fucked me off actually, because they were going to be put into the blue light services, the military as well,
Yep.
but because they can, as yourselves, because you can't guarantee 100% success rate, they said no, we don't want, we're not going to fund you. And basically you go on a course, and you go through the stages of their techniques that they use, which is brilliant. And one of them was the use of Lego. And a lot of people say to me, yeah, a lot of people go, what? And the idea is the first time you use it is they'll say something along the lines, build something that makes you happy, and then you build it, and you can use whatever blocks or whatever, and whatever it is, you build it, and then you talk about it, and then they go, right, now we need to go into one of the deeper, darker parts of your life. What was your sort of trigger phase? And then you build it all up, and then, funnily enough, you talk about it. And as
Yeah,
you're talking about it, you're releasing the valve slightly, and you're letting it all out. And I've still got pictures of mine. I'll send them to you after this. And I remember doing it, and I was sat in there, and I remember I felt quite embarrassed at the start to do it because I was sat in there with a couple of Royal Marines. There was another gentleman from PWRR, and then there was a head of counter-terrorism from the Met Police, and all this. And I was like, well, these guys have all seen fucking all sorts, and here's me who's quite depressed and got a hint of PTSD and things like this. And I was like, and as we said at the start, I was like, they're worse than me. I'm a bit embarrassed to talk about it. But Al McGregor, the guy that ran the course, he's a civvy bloke, and he is superb. He's one of the nicest blokes I've ever met. He's ginormous. He's like 6'5". He's got a massive beard. He's quite big. Looks like a country singer. But he was just brilliant. He went, nah. He went, we're all different. We've all got our own traumas that we got to get through. He went, just let it out, and I did, and I spoke about it from the main point that really triggered me to getting help, and then my journey to where I was sat. And I blubbered like a baby while I was doing it, because there's a part in it with my eldest daughter, and I speak about it quite often. Was when she found me on the floor in my kitchen, just bawling my eyes out because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go, didn't know where to turn, and she put her forehead against mine and was like, "Daddy, it's fine. We all love you." I was like, "You're the reason. You and your sister. You're the reason. You're the light. You're what I need." And as I was talking about that, I was getting all choked up. I was crying. Everyone else was getting a bit choked up, and I was like, Jesus, this is some powerful stuff. And then it's bizarre. And then you say to someone else, how did you go for? How was the course? What did you do? Oh, I built some stuff with Lego. And they're like, with Lego? It's like, don't knock it. It's fucking brilliant. Highly recommend it. It's a Swedish tactic, I think.
yeah.
Yeah,
But I mean, that doesn't surprise me because it's it's about taking allowing the mind time to present something in your life whilst you're doing something else, and therefore it comes out you know exactly as you remember it, as opposed to you thinking about it and how you're going to hide things or how you're going to
yeah,
present things to other people, so it doesn't sound too bad. We don't necessarily do the same at Rock Recovery, but we can work content free, so no one has to describe their trauma.
hmm.
So can actually work on the feelings as opposed to the events, and that's really
Got you.
important to a lot of people,
Hmm.
particularly to the 999 world, who see often on a daily basis, really quite nasty stuff, particularly you're a traffic cop, for
Oh
example,
yeah, of course,
or,
yeah.
or you're a firefighter. And so it really helps to be able to do that. What we found, sorry, I haven't found it, but what Jamie and Malcolm have found in the coaches, and we've got 16 of them working around the country, what they have found, which is really interesting, is that often those feelings, those horrible feelings associated with trauma, go back to their childhood. And you
Hmm.
were asked the question, when did you first feel that way? Now, Jamie tells a great story about in training being close to a couple of smoke bombs, mortar bombs going off, and 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 he remembers feeling that way when he was in trouble with his dad when he was a kid, and and often that comes through with our clients. So you end up talking and dealing with the child as opposed to the man or the woman in front of you. You're actually dealing with the child, because that's when that first feeling occurred. And it's astonishing, if you can help them with that first feeling, all the subsequent ones go away. Don't ask anyone how, but they do.
Yeah.
Very clever techniques and training. But and I think a lot of it comes from, your therapist was this very, very gentle, kind man. It's about building that rapport where the trust is there that you're going to be led or shown a way, which you have to go to actually help yourself. And you're all different. And I think, there are a number of things that we can do. You pick up the phone to Rock Recovery, you'll be in front of one of Callum or Al, and they're going to give you hope. But it's going to be a short conversation, because they're not a coach. And actually, by the time many clients get to us, they've got fed up with answering questions, filling in forms, and they got seriously fed up. What's your assessment of Rock Recovery? Well, we don't have one. We're not clinical. So if you want help, you get it. Simple as that. So the next thing you're going to see is your coach after this phone call. That's the next thing you are going to see. But they're all individuals. So we give them hope straight away. We want to make a difference in the first session, but they're all individuals. So there's no set process. So this is not, we start this, we then go on to this, and we then go on to that. It's a person's presenting. So the number of times we've introduced someone into the office in Exeter where Malcolm and Jamie or Tony are coaching, people are physically shaken, terrified about what's going to happen. Well, you can't do a set process in those. You've got to calm that person down first. You've got to show that this is a caring organisation, that actually you are the most important person in the room, in the world at that moment. And our sessions are long. So those face-to-face ones are 2 hours. There's an awful lot of work done in that 2 hours.
Yeah, definitely.
And we try and coach independence. We're teaching them, or hopefully not teaching, we're coaching them to not need us, to become their own coach, so that they don't need us in the future.
So obviously
we're not a crutch.
That's the ultimate goal, is to be able to get yourself through the recovery. And then obviously if you need, as you said, the crutch or the walking stick or whatever, then you know where to go. And that's a huge thing. And that was a big thing for me. Was as most people want to try and do it on their own straight away, but obviously you need that little guide. You need that helping hand. You need something. You can't just do it all on your own.
Well, I don't think, isn't it? But when we were serving, did we ever do it on our own? I can't remember.
No, you always had a battle buddy. Always had a battle buddy.
I was surrounded by all sorts of people who knew better than me until it was actually quite scary, and then suddenly it was different. But but I keep saying to everyone that I'm the privileged person here. I served with just extraordinary people, and allies as well, and enemies as well. You often have more in common with your enemy than you think you have, and they too were fighting for a cause. There was a reason for theirs. No different from ours in a lot of ways. We were privileged, and that's the other difficulty of transition out of the service, is you've got to stop yourself thinking that you're not going to meet those people again. What you've got to do is say they're different. It's not going to be the same, but there are equal people out there. And then I've been out since 2005, and I've been in 3 different organisations with not a lot of military in them, or former military in them, and yet those people have been pretty special too. Different,
definitely
different, but still pretty special.
That's awesome. One thing I want to touch on before I leave you to the rest of your evening. How was the long walk home?
Great. You speak to my family. I'm still knackered. My right hip is my right hip is in serious. So it's 3 months now, serious agony. But for me, the walk home was, it kind of encapsulated for me everything that mattered to me in life. As I come towards the end of my working life, I've only got 250 odd days left. I wanted to do something with Mark. I left the RMA. I left him in the RMA, the Royal Marines Association, that is, back in 2012. He's been really busy. I've done a couple of jobs for Rock Recovery now, and we haven't had much time together, although we kept in touch. I wanted to do something with him that was a bit more than just an afternoon. So 4 days was quite special. We had some really good, close, intimate moments on that walk with no one else around, which was lovely. Nice. Talked about a lot of stuff that will stay just with the two of us.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. And because he is the man I admire most in the world. And also I wanted to push myself physically. It's nice to go back to I've used my brain a huge amount in the last 20 odd years, but it was nice. And when I do my walks, it's nice to get that physical tiredness as well. I mean,
yes,
I was seriously tired. I was seriously tired. I mean, pulling Mark uphill is not the friendliest of things, particularly some of the Devon Hill. But no, it was good. We raised some decent money for Rock to Recovery, but it was also telling myself and telling my family and telling others that I am stopping. I'm not carrying on. And I think some people think that I might just keep going, but I'm not going to. There are things I do want to do. There are books I want to read. So for me, it was, that's it. The world now knows, what the world, that's arrogant and stupid. The recovery audience now knows that, I am actually leaving. I will stay a volunteer. I'll join in things. But, it was a statement really, but also it was fun. I can't explain it. I suppose you start training at Lympstone and you do still need that physical pain, that physical challenge.
Yeah, you need something.
Every now and then, just feel human.
Yeah, make you feel human, make you feel alive, and sort of give you that little devil on your shoulder to say, you can still do this.
True, but also, what was really funny that I didn't anticipate was how many clients we picked up as a result of it. We always say that we would rather have clients than money. It sounds trite, but it's true. And I think we probably picked up between 20 and 30 clients listening on the radio. Wow. Going around there. I had one guy stop in a car because I was on my own, because when it's the downhill bits, Mark...
Does he zoom off?
It's and it leaves me way behind. And this guy stopped. There was a huge queue behind him, so I'd gotten those. I said, "You've got to keep going, sir. Just want you to know that I listened to you, I heard what you had to say, and I phoned Callum this morning, and I've got my first session next week."
Oh, that's amazing.
So good for you, pal. Well done.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. And
I just want to say thank you to you, Sean, for Granite Zero, the football match, and the support you give us, because I bet you we've got clients from that, what you do, and that's really important. The more people we can help, then the happier we are, and you're doing your bit, and thank you very much indeed. We really value it.
As I always say, it's our privilege and our honor to help in any way, and we've got our own motto at FC Granite Zero, which I stole from my warrant officer on 15 Squadron, which is one team and one effort. We all work as a team.
Good.
Doesn't matter the result on the day, which goes against everything that I stand for as a sportsman. But yeah, it's fantastic, and even even getting down the old soldier, he's fantastic on the day as well.
He is good.
He's brilliant.
Well, I love that man.
Yeah, he's a fantastic guy.
Great man, and that's something I'm going to do. Is I'm going to be able to spend some time with people like him in the future, which will be nice.
Yeah, I'm actually going to have to get in contact to him again, because he's only up the road from me, so
we
need to go and get a beer.
Yeah, he's not far.
Get a beer, but Charlie, I won't take up any more of your evening. I don't want you getting told off by the Zero Alpha.
Yeah, but you can cut as much as you like out of it, because I'm sure I'm really boring.
No, I'm putting it all in. No, thank you very much for giving me your time. I could literally, if it wasn't time restricted, I could chat with you all day.
Well, that's easily done, isn't it? We are military.
Exactly. We love a good chat. No, but thanks for your time. And you, mate. You have a good evening.
I'm going to have to go now, but
cheers. No, you have a good one.
Thanks.
Cheers, buddy. Bye.
Hello. You're at the adverts, so don't turn off. Don't turn off, because I've got some good stuff for you. First up, I'm going to talk about our sponsors. Kent CBD is our first sponsor. Now, CBD oil, as you know, has tremendous benefits, especially within mental health and physical health. Personally, I use it to help with my anxiety and my depression, but not only that, I also use it to help with the aches and pains of life in my joints, especially my ankles and my knees. But yeah, without CBD oil, I would have still been on my antidepressant tablets, which I'm no longer on. So, every cloud. And what we're going to do here at Granite Zero is we're going to give you 10% off everything from oil, muscle rub, jellies, bath salts, the lot. Yeah? Make sure you get in there. www.kentcbd.org. Put in the promo code GRANITE0 and get yourself 10% off. You are welcome. But also, if you're like me and you love a nice cup of coffee. Now, for me, I only drink one coffee, and that's Green Beret coffee. Now, I don't only drink it because it's out of this world fucking coffee, roast to order, grinded to whatever specific grind you want. But not only that, it's veteran owned and veteran run, which, hits me right in the feels. So make sure you check it out, Green Beret Coffee. Get yourself a nice cup of coffee. I drink it dark, just like my soul. Incredible stuff, incredible stuff. And what I'm going to give for you, I'm going to give you 10% off. So once you get to the checkout, once you've got all your coffee, your products, your apparel, whatever you need, get to the checkout and put in the promo code GZPodcast10 and get yourself 10% off. Courtesy of the Granite Zero podcast. You are welcome. Now, that's enough of me talking about this stuff. Back to the regular scheduled show. Check it out!